Today I'm going to be doing a tactical analysis of the Bundesliga match between Bayern Munich and RB Leipzig. Starting with the formations, Bayern Munich lined up in a typically modern 4-3-3. By that I mean the wingers tucked inside and the fullbacks got very high up the field and overlapped the wingers. On the other side I have RB Leipzig lined up in a 5-4-1 formation. However, they swap formations regularly depending on the phase of play. So the first phase of play we're going to look at is Bayern Munich's build-up play out of the back. RB Leipzig had a very set strategy on how they wanted to press Bayern Munich high up the field. The first principle was that the center backs were to be pretty much left alone, and their forward, Dani Olmo, focused more on denying passes into the holding midfielder, who for Bayern Munich was Joshua Kimmich. The wide midfielders for RB Leipzig, Werner and Nkunku, both stayed very high and wide, focusing on forcing the center backs to play into the middle and denying any passing lanes out wide to the fullbacks. We can also see here in midfield that Leimer and Sabitzer were focused on man marking the Bayern Munich midfield. We can see here that defensively we have a 3v3 here in midfield with Goretzka, Kimmich, and Thiago as the three in midfield for Bayern Munich, and then Leimer, Olmo, and Sabitzer man-marking each of the three and denying passes into the midfield. Because of how the midfielders and the forward lined up for RB Leipzig in this phase of play, RB Leipzig was left with 5 at the back against Bayern Munich's 3 forwards. Typically, teams who tactically adjust for their opponents, such as RB Leipzig under Nagelsmann, like to line up with a spare defender at the back. That meaning that with Bayern Munich's 3 forwards, RB Leipzig then would typically line up with 4 defenders so that they always have a spare man. However, with Bayern Munich's 4-3-3, their fullbacks like to get very high up the field, meaning that a lot of times it will be more like 5 in the forward line than 3. So playing with 5 at the back for RB Leipzig allows them to have an overload of a 5v3, but also to be able to match up man for man if their fullbacks get high up the field. Another thing playing with 5 at the back allowed RB Leipzig to do was for one wing back at a time to press aggressively. Typically this was Adams, number 14, on the right-hand side, stepping up into midfield and helping press when necessary. This means that even when he steps up to press and help try to win the ball back high up the field, we still have 4 defenders at the back against Bayern Munich's 3 forwards, meaning that we still have our overload. Bayern Munich dominated possession in the early stages of the game, and the biggest way they did this was by rotating their midfield in order to force the RB Leipzig midfield into confusing situations. As we see here, Olmo is man-marking Kimmich in the holding midfield role. So what Kimmich will do is he will slide to the side, and it allows Thiago to come help in the build-up phase. This forces Leimer, number 27, to choose to either follow Thiago deep or hold his position and try to deny any passes into Gnabry and Lewandowski. So as we see here, Kimmich will slide over and Thiago will drop in. This also lets Goretzka push higher up the field. Now Olmo is caught in a situation where he has to either follow Kimmich and leave Thiago open or shift over to Thiago, but he cannot cover both at the same time because their spacing is good enough that he is not able to reach both. So what Olmo will do is he follows Kimmich because that is his man-marking assignment, and Leimer tries to split the difference between Thiago and Gnabry and dissuade passes into Thiago while also trying to cover from Gnabry. So as we'll see in the rotation, Olmo will come over to Kimmich, Sabitzer will go back to man-marking Goretzka, and Leimer will step up a little bit but not follow Thiago all the way. So now this is how Bayern dominated possession in the early stages of the game. Thiago here has more than enough space for someone of his quality to receive the ball, turn, and look at options forward. When Thiago receives the ball, Gnabry and Alphonso Davies on the left-hand side for Bayern sort of swap positions, with Gnabry dropping deeper and Davies pushing up higher. We can see that in this animation here. This now puts the Leipzig defenders in a conundrum because Klostermann, number 16, does not want to follow Gnabry all the way this deep into midfield, leaving a gap. And Adams does not want to follow Gnabry because he will then leave Davies wide open down the wing. So if we take a look at an example of how this happens, if Neuer plays a goal kick short to Alaba, Nkunku and Leimer step high to man mark their men and deny passes. This now leaves Gnabry wide open in the midfield. So if we play that pass, we can see Klosterman will try to step out to deny, as Adams does not want to step out and leave Davies wide open on the wing. However, this leaves a gap that Davies exploited down the wing quite often, using his pace to get down the wing and deliver crosses that were very difficult to deal with for Leipzig defenders. So now we're going to look at how Leipzig transitioned from pressing high into their lower block. Like I had at the beginning of the video, Leipzig were in a 5-4-1 formation. However, when they pressed high up the field, it was more of a 5-2-3 formation, with the outside midfielder stepping very high and trying to deny the passing lane between the center back and the fullback. But as we see here, as Bayern dominated possession and moved the ball forward, Leipzig would shrink back into defense and become compact. And now you can see that Leipzig have transitioned from that 5-2-3 high pressing system that is broken by the Bayern Munich build-up. We have now fallen back into a compact 5-4-1 shape. Now let's look at how Leipzig transitioned from their defensive phase into their attacking phase. So let's say this pass gets played and it's a misplaced pass all the way to the keeper. Now we're going to see how Leipzig transitioned into their attacking shape. So if we look at how they spread out, you can see the shape here. We have a forward now at the back with a diamond in midfield and 2 wide forwards. Let's take a step back to see how they make that transition again. Of the back 5 for Leipzig, the wingback Adams steps into midfield. The rest of the remaining 4 of the back 5 will then form the back 4 in our attacking shape. Leimer drops in as a holding midfielder. Sabitzer holds his shape. Olmo drops in as an attacking midfielder in a number 10 role, almost a false 9. And Nkunku and Werner both stay high and wide. So if we watch this again, we can see the shape change. And now we can see the shape that Bayern pressed with as well. So why would Leipzig choose this shape to build up in? Well, basically we know that Lewandowski is probably going to be pressing mostly on his own. So 2 center backs plus a goalkeeper in build up is more than enough to go around him. Then if we look at the midfield, Leipzig have a diamond in midfield. So we have 4 midfielders in a diamond shape compared to Bayern Munich's 3 midfielders. So we outnumber them in midfield. Our center backs outnumber Lewandowski, and the Leipzig fullbacks are one-on-one with the wingers from Bayern. So if Leipzig have an overload in defense and an overload in midfield, then we know that we're going to be underloaded in the attacking line. Leipzig's main strategy was to build up through the midfield and then hope that a Bayern fullback steps up out of position to help, and then we are isolated 1v1 with our pacey wide forwards in Nkunku and Werner, who both possess a lot of pace, against Boateng and Alaba. Leipzig mostly tried to exploit the fullbacks being out of position in transition phases because, as we talked about earlier, Bayern Munich's fullbacks like to step very high up the field in possession of the ball and become almost the wingers of the front line. So what Leipzig would do then would be to try to leave their wide forwards high up the field and exploit that on the counterattack. So for example, if Pavard here at right back would try to step out to help Muller cover Angelino down the Bayern right-hand side, Werner now has a lot of space to run into down the sideline, isolated up against Boateng. This was seen in the biggest chance of the game for Leipzig when Nkunku did a similar thing down the left-hand side and put in a cross that Werner missed. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video talking about the general shape of Leipzig and Bayern Munich, and please leave any feedback in the comments.